And the witness said, he said, I am simply a witness to whence I came, where I am, witness to what I've seen and the possibilities that I think I see. And I have memorized that sentence. The way you memorize a prayer when prayer is all you have. Witness to what I've seen. Witness to what I've seen. He said, a society must assume that it is stable, but the artist must know and let us know that there is nothing stable under heaven. And we know it now, don't we? We know it now. Nothing stable under heaven. He tried to tell us. He tried to tell us, and he used the most beautiful sentences anyone has ever written in this language. And we turned them into posters. We printed them on tote bags. We quoted them at dinner parties. And we did not hear them. And now the dinner parties are over. And the tote bags are ash. And the sentences are still here. And the sentences are the only things still here. The sentences are the only things still here. He was a boy preacher, 14 years old in a storefront church, and the King James Bible went into his blood, and it never came out. He left the church, but he did not leave the pulpit. He transformed it. He carried the call and the response into the essay, the novel, the letter, the interview, the debate, the room where the white host smiles and asks him to be reasonable. Somebody once said of him, no other writer was as literary. In his early essays, not even Ellison, there's something wild in the beauty of his sentences and the cool of his tone. This meeting of Henry James, the Bible, and Harlem. Henry James, the Bible, and Harlem. 3 rivers, 1 sea, and Morrison, Toni Morrison, stood over his body and said, you made American English honest, genuinely international. You stripped it of ease and false comfort and fake innocence and evasion and hypocrisy. She said he didn't just use the language. He changed what the language could do. He changed what the language could do. And we need it now. We need what he made the language capable of, because we are living in the after. And the old language, the language of explanations, the language of reason, the language of, on the other hand, that language is dead. It died. We watched it die. We watched it die. We watched it die. And I remember the explainer. Do you remember the explainer? He had a podcast. He had a newspaper column. He was the first name in every liberal group chat. He was Ezra. And he built a house of explanations. And he fitted every window with a chart. And the light that entered was the light he chose. And his readers received it in their kitchens. And they nodded over their newsletters. And the nodding was taken for understanding. And the understanding was taken for action. And the action never came. The action never came. The action never came. He wrote about why we were polarized. The reviews were favorable. The favorable reviews were read by the favorable. The polarization deepened. He explained the deepening. The explanation was another kind of depth, from which nobody was rescued. He wrote about abundance, and the economist said, you play into the hands of those who would dismantle. And the socialist said, you have nothing to say about the working class. And the reviewer said, you have no theory of power. Of course he had no theory of power. The witness told us. The witness told us. 60 years before the after times, the white liberal is more devoted to order than to justice. And the explainer was devoted to order. He was devoted to charts. He was devoted to the beautiful machinery of explanation. And the machinery was so beautiful that nobody noticed. It was not connected to anything. Not connected to anything. Not connected to anything. He sat across from Charlie Kirk. You remember Kirk, the one who built his whole politics on the dehumanization of the vulnerable. And the explainer said, he said, this is politics done in exactly the right way. I need you to hear this. I need everyone who's left to hear this. The explainer looked at cruelty and called it admirable, and the cruelty smiled, because it had been given a liberal imprimatur, and it went forth and it built, and what it built is what we're living in now. And the writer in Current Affairs said, he is a bad advertisement for a politics of discourse and engagement, because he suggests it involves being weak in confrontations with white supremacy and genocide, weak in confrontations with genocide. And the man from Counterpunch said his big tent demands that marginalized people swallow their concerns for the sake of his coalition. And the man from CEPR said he told the country the economy was broken, while real wages were rising for the poorest, and they believed him, and they voted for the strong man. And here we are, after the strong man, in the after times, where the explanations cannot reach us, where the explanations cannot reach us. The witness said, not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. The explainer faced nothing. He explained everything, and the distance between facing and explaining is the distance between this moment, here, now, in the wreckage, and the moment we might have prevented it. He was not wicked. I will not say he was wicked. He was comfortable. And comfort was the enemy of witness, and his comfort was the last, most effective shield between cruelty and accountability. The witness said, it is not permissible that the authors of devastation should also be innocent. It is the innocence which constitutes the crime. The explainer's innocence, his blameless, well-researched, lustrously footnoted innocence. It is the innocence. It is the innocence. It is the innocence, which constitutes the crime. And the rationalist, you remember the rationalist. He had a meditation app. He had a podcast too. Everybody had a podcast before the after times. He said, science shall determine morality. He said, the brain scan reveals the good. And Thomas Nagel, one of the most respected philosophers alive, read his book and then said, too crude to be of interest, as a contribution to moral theory, too crude. And the biologist said, your use of neuroimaging is extravagant. And the psychologist said, your metric fails. And Dennett, his own peer, his intellectual companion, it said, you shrink the self to a dimensionless point, a witness stuck in the Cartesian theater. And Harris said, you are theologians. And Harris said, you are unwell. And Harris said, this conversation is tedious. And he terminated the exchange. He terminated the exchange. That is how the after times were built. One terminated exchange at a time, one tedious at a time, one refusal to listen at a time. He looked at 1 billion people and saw only doctrine. He read no Arabic. He had no credentials. He got his Quranic translations from the internet and presumed to explain a civilization that had been interpreting itself for 1,400 years. And the historian said, your history is wrong. Galileo was not shown instruments of torture. Christianity did not cause Rome's fall. The foundations of modern science were laid in the Middle Ages, assisted by the Church. 6 sustained minutes of pseudo-historical gibberish in a single interview, and the Arabist said suicide bombing was invented by secular nationalists. The century's 100 million dead were killed by communists, by fascists, by nationalists. Personal piety does not correlate with violence. But the rationalist does not read the Arabist. The rationalist reads himself. He reads himself. He reads himself and calls it evidence. And then he invited the bell curve man to his table. He poured the wine of forbidden knowledge. He said, "Let us discuss, as honest men, why they score lower on the tests." And 3 scientists who had spent their careers on this exact question said, "This is not consensus. This is pseudoscience. The genetic claim is not supported. The environmental factors are extensively documented." And Harris said, "You are motivated by politics." And they said, "We are motivated by data." And Harris said, "This is a free speech question." A free speech question. The witness said it. The witness said it when he was alive. And the words are still burning. For 2 white men to sit in a room and discuss why Black Americans are less intelligent is not a courageous stand in American history. It is the most common thing. In American history, it is the conversation that built the ship. It is the conversation that wrote the law. It is the conversation that designed the test and then measured the people. The test was designed to fail. And Harris called it forbidden knowledge. And Harris called it courage. How common. How very, very common. How common. He mused about nuclear first strikes against the Islamic world. He mused about it as if 100 million lives were a thought experiment for a man who will never be inside the thought. He weighed the birth rates of European Muslims on the scales of his anxiety. He endorsed the torture of the body for information. He endorsed the profiling of the face for safety. He endorsed the invasion for liberation. And the war correspondent, the one who won the Pulitzer, who saw what war does, said, "You mirror the fundamentalists. You claim to oppose. Both believe humanity progresses toward perfection. Both externalize evil. Both refuse to acknowledge human moral complexity." And another said, "This is not liberalism. This is radical authoritarianism, nativism, and militant imperialism, masquerading as rationality." And another named it plainly, "New atheism, old empire." And Hedges said, "Not believing in God is not dangerous. Not believing in sin is very dangerous. Not believing in sin. Not believing in sin, because the man who has abolished sin has abolished the possibility of his own error. And the man who cannot err cannot be corrected. And the man who cannot be corrected." The witness said it. People who imagine history flatters them are impaled on their history like a butterfly and become incapable of change. The rationalist was impaled, pinned to the board of his own certainty. And from that fixed position, he surveyed the world and mistook his paralysis for clarity. And Chomsky wrote to him and proved that Clinton never provided evidence, that al-Shifa manufactured weapons, that later investigations found no ties to terror, that the destruction of half of Sudan's pharmaceutical supplies killed tens of thousands. And when the body count between the sides differed by a factor of hundreds, Chomsky said, "The bodies matter." And Harris called it tedious. The dead are tedious. The dead were always tedious. To the man with the meditation app, Lord have mercy, Lord have mercy on the dead who are tedious. But I did not come here to condemn. I came here because I need the words of the witness, the way I need water. I need them because the explainer's words are dead, and the rationalist's words are dead, and the only words still living are the ones that came from the body, from the pulpit, from the storefront church, from exile, from the fire. He said, love takes off the masks that we fear we cannot live without and know we cannot live within. I use the word love here, not merely in the personal sense, but as a state of being or a state of grace, not in the infantile American sense of being made happy, but in the tough and universal sense of quest and daring and growth. Quest and daring and growth in the after times, when everything else has failed. Quest and daring and growth. Quest and daring and growth. Quest and daring and growth. Tony. Tony? She stood over his body and said, you gave us language, courage, and tenderness. And she carried them into beloved. And the carrying was not imitation. The carrying was continuation. Her fire burned hotter than his. And the teacher who is surpassed by the student is the only teacher who is truly taught. Hilton. Hilton Alls found the witness's book at 14 and said, his essays became my spiritual autobiography, a record of the life I long to lead. He learned from the witness to use singing, the sound of singing, in his prose. He called the witness's career a cautionary tale, a warning, as well as an inspiration. And that is how you honor the dead, not by worshiping, by arguing. Not by worshiping, by arguing. Ta-Nehisi, Ta-Nehisi. He wrote a letter to his son in the form the witness made. And Morrison herself said, I've been wondering who might fill the intellectual void that plagued me. After Baldwin died, clearly it is Ta-Nehisi Coates, but the witness maintained faith in the possibility of awakening. And Coates warns his son not to build his life around the small chance of the dreamers coming into consciousness. And I understand Coates in the after times. I understand Coates, but I cannot follow him entirely because I am alive. And the witness said, I can't be a pessimist because I am alive. I am forced to believe that we can survive. Forced. Not convinced. Not persuaded. Forced. By the sheer fact of breathing. Forced to believe. Forced to believe. Jesmyn Ward edited The Fire this time because Trayvon Martin was dead and the fire had not yet come, and the fire had always been here. She said of the witness, I love you enough to see you clearly. That sentence. In the after times, that sentence. I love you enough to see you clearly. That is what the explainer could not do. He could not love us enough to see us clearly. He loved us enough to explain us. And explaining is not seeing. That is what the rationalist could not do. He could not love anyone enough to see them clearly. He loved his certainty enough. He loved his own mind enough. He did not love the world. I love you enough to see you clearly. I love you enough to see you clearly. Barry Jenkins filmed The Witness's Beale Street. He filmed Moonlight. He filmed the tenderness the witness insisted on. the most radical form of strength, to show a person being touched gently in a country that had only ever touched them with violence. Meshul. Michel Cello sang the Witness's gospel, worked on it for a decade, no more water. A decade of her life poured into the sound of his. Kendrick Lamar echoed the Witness's reflections in The Butterfly and the Pimp, and the music carried. What the essay and the podcast cannot, the body moving to the word, the congregation feeling the testimony. Before the mind has time to explain it away. Danez Smith opened their first collection with the Witness's words, but because the words were still alive, because the words refused to die, and Smith continues the project. Blackness and queerness entwined, not as identity, but as an act of living, and the Witness himself said. He felt like a stranger with the word gay. And Smith understands that strangeness, and the understanding is the continuation. The fire continues. The fire continues. Colm Toibin, who is Irish, who nearly became a priest, who struggled with his own church, and his own body, read the Witness's novel as an undergraduate, and recognized in John Grimes a little bit of himself. And that is what the Witness always said. The particular is the universal. The boy in the Harlem storefront and the boy in the Irish seminary are the same boy, kneeling before a God they are not sure they believe in, asking to be saved from a world that has told them their love is wrong. The particular is the universal. The particular is the universal. Eddie Glaude, who said, Jimmy's essays demanded a kind of honesty with yourself without sentimentality. Rachel Kazi Gansa, who called The Witness, the high priest in charge of her prayer. Raoul Peck, who made the film, from the unfinished manuscript and said, those words are so accurate, they are so prescient, so impactful. And Magdalena Zaborowska, a bisexual immigrant woman from Cold War Poland, who addressed the Witness as a kindred spirit, proving that the fire crosses every border, every body, every name. I say to all of them, from the aftertimes, you are the proof that the Witness did not write in vain. He did not write in vain. He did not write in vain. Ezra, I needed you. We all needed you. You were so smart. You were so careful. You had the platform and the audience, and the gift for making complicated things seem simple. And you used it to make dangerous things seem manageable. You made the fascist seem like a legitimate interlocutor. You made the collapse seem like a policy problem. You made the fire seem like something that could be explained. And the Witness told us, he told us, the role of the artist is exactly the same as the role of the lover. If I love you, I have to make you conscious of the things you don't know. You didn't love us, Ezra. You informed us. And information is not love. Information is what the doctor gives you before the surgery. Love is holding your hand while they cut. Information is not love. Information is not love. Sam, I needed you too. We needed someone who would say, reason matters, evidence matters. The truth is not a matter of opinion. And instead you gave us your own opinions, dressed in the costume of truth. You gave us your fear of Islam and called it moral clarity. You gave us Charles Murray's discredited data and called it forbidden knowledge. You gave us your tolerance of torture and called it difficult but necessary. The Witness said, The failure of the protest novel lies in its rejection of life, the human being, the denial of his beauty, dread power, in its insistence that it is his categorization alone, which is real and cannot be transcended. Your categories, Sam. Muslim as monolith, IQ as destiny, rational as the boundary between those who matter and those who don't. The witness said, every human being is an unprecedented miracle. Everyone. The imam in Dearborn who feeds the hungry. The mother in Beirut who buries her child and prays and prays and prays to the God you insist is the source of her suffering. She is not a data point in your thesis. She is an unprecedented miracle. And you reduced her. You reduced a billion unprecedented miracles to a danger assessment. Every human being is an unprecedented miracle. Every human being is an unprecedented miracle. The witness said, you were born into a society which spelled out with brutal clarity and in as many ways as possible that you were a worthless human being. And I think of that sentence now in the after times, and I think he was talking about everyone. He was talking about what happens when a society decides that explanation is a substitute for justice, and reason is a substitute for mercy, and civility is a substitute for love. The society spells it out with brutal clarity in as many ways as possible. You're not worth saving. And the explainer writes an article about it, and the rationalist writes a book about it, and neither of them sees you. But the witness saw. The witness always saw. He said, I love America more than any other country in the world, which is why I insist on the right to criticize her relentlessly. And I say now in the after, in whatever this is, in the ruins, in the drone of our survival, I love what we were, more than I have ever loved anything, which is why I refuse to forgive the people who explained it to death. Lord, have mercy. The witness said, we cannot be free until they are free, and hatred destroys the one who hates. And we can make America what America must become, not what it is, what it must become. That word, must, is the only word that matters now. The explainer lived in is. The rationalist lived in is. The witness lived in must. And must is the only word that survives the after times. Must is the fire. Must is the chant. Must is the reason I am still singing. Must, must. He said, the poets are finally the only people who know the truth about us, not the explainers, not the rationalists, the poets, the ones who risk everything, the ones who surrender possessions, relationships, certainties, identity itself. Morrison was one of them. Alce is one of them. Ward is one of them. Smith is one of them. The kid we'll never meet, reading the witness's words for the first time and feeling the fire catch, that kid is one of them. The witness said, I can't be a pessimist because I am alive. I am forced to believe that we can survive, and I am alive, and I am forced, and we are alive, and we are forced, not because the evidence supports it. Ezra, not because the evidence supports it. Sam, not because reason demands it, because we are alive. And the living have no choice but to believe in the possibility of life. And belief is not certainty. Belief is the courage to act. Without certainty, belief is the fire that burns in the absence of proof. the fire that burns in the absence of proof, the fire that burns in the absence of proof. He said, a society must assume that it is stable, but the artist must know and let us know that there is nothing stable under heaven. Nothing stable under heaven. Everything possible under heaven. Grant us not clarity, but honesty. Grant us not certainty, but courage. Grant us not answers, but the strength to live. Inside the questions, the fire, the fire, the fire, the witness, the witness.